My name is Jiamian Wang, the coordinator of the Generation Restoration Dialogues and the host today. Today, we're joined by our speaker, Dr. Tony Simons. How are you, Dr. Tony Simons?
Very well, thanks, Jiamian.
Would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
I would rather spend all the time listening to our two fantastic speakers, but briefly, my name is Tony Simons. I previously was the executive director at C4NICRAF and have had the pleasure and privilege of working with communities around the tropics and having some fantastic partners as well in the G20 Global Land Initiative. I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you, Tony. It's our great honor to have you. Also, we have two young ecopreneurs from ECO. The Youth Ecopreneur Program, ECO, is a global accelerator that empowers young entrepreneurs and seeks to enhance their competitiveness and scale of youth-led businesses, focusing on land restoration and green businesses. It is created by the G20 Global Land Initiative and the International Trade Center, ITC. So we have Paula from FERO and Carlos from Pacchar. So how are you, Paula and Paula and Carlos?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Jamian, for the invitation, and thank you for all the G20 Global Land Initiative team.
Okay, would you like to introduce yourself, Paula and Carlos? Maybe you can go first, Paula.
Yes, so I will later, I suppose, go to my slides, Jamian, if not correct me. But briefly, yeah, my name is Paula Medina. I am from Spain, but I am based in Senegal now, and I am the COO and co-founder of FERO, that's Senegalese social enterprise, that I will talk a bit more about it later.
Thank you. Thank you, Paula. Would you like to introduce yourself, Carlos?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jamian, and the organizers for making this possible. My name is Carlos Gonzalez. I'm from Ecuador, a tropical country in South America. I'm an agro-industrial engineer, and since 2021, I am the CEO of PACHAR, a biochar startup business in Ecuador, making a change towards sustainable agriculture.
Thank you so much, Paula and Carlos. It's our great honor to have you as young entrepreneurs. So to those joining us for the first time, the Generation Restoration Dialogue is a series of monthly webinars hosted by the G20 Global Land Initiative. We are a global initiative that aims to reduce degraded land by 50% by 2040. Please visit our website, sign up for our newsletter, and follow us on social media to hear more about us and the Generation Restoration Dialogue. Okay, today we will talk about ecopreneurship and green business. As highlighted in the webinar title, green business can save our planet. Ecopreneurs from the globe are running green businesses that make positive impact in both environmental and economic aspects of sustainable development. More powers from young generation and other communities need to be gathered and inspired. So in this webinar, our speakers will share experience and insights to demonstrate how to develop a business idea and turn it into a green business, and more importantly, to grow and finance it. To help you understand the context of green business our peers are running, let's welcome our young ecopreneur to briefly introduce their business. Please put your question in the chat in the question box, and we will discuss them later. So, Paula, would you like to go first to have a short introduction for our audience?
Yes, thank you. I'm going to share my screen now. Can you see my screen, Jamian? Yes, perfect. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. As I said before, my name is Paula Medina Agromayor, and I am the COO and co-founder of FERO. At FERO, we are using reforestation as a tool to economically empower smallholder farmers in Senegal. 3 years ago, we came to Senegal and we met Abdou Faye, a farmer for over 4 decades from a village called Holpa. He explained to us how his land was getting tired, how productivity is reducing because every year is getting warmer and warmer, and every year there's also lower levels of rainfall, or likely due to climate change. Abdu's son Adam had already left farming behind because he was just no longer producing enough income to survive in the modern economy. And this short story is the reality of over 3 million smallholder farmers in Senegal. If they do not retrieve their hope back in their rural livelihoods, the youth will migrate to urban cities, and their farmlands could one day turn into deserts. But at FERO, we believe that these challenges should be reversible. So we have designed a new farming model that restores hope and brings a real solution to these farmers. One that will transform this image of the left of degradation, desertification, and abandonment into a productive and regenerative system that combines bamboo greenhouses with agroforestry. Because we believe that land restoration has to go hand in hand with economic empowerment of rural communities. We start by building simple dikes that catch and store the rainwater that normally runs off into the ocean. At the same time, we install clusters of 5 greenhouses with centralized irrigation and solar energy infrastructure. The greenhouse generates climate resilient and high returns within 3 months. That bridges a bit the gap of the 2 years that needs for the agroforestry to mature and produce significant income. The agroforest is then planted in an optimized spatial model, and we use climate-adapted species that reduces the water demand while cooling the microclimate and regenerating soils again with life. Our innovative greenhouse is mid-tech because we control the temperature and humidity inside. Because plants are just like us humans, if it's 35 or 40 degrees, we are not as productive when working, right? So for plants, it's exactly the same. So we really aim to create the optimal climatic conditions inside the greenhouse for the plants to be happy and thrive. The greenhouse is also designed for water efficiency, as we catch and collect all the rainwater that goes in the roof, and then we store it in a surrounding basin. And this water can cover around 50% of the irrigation demand of the dry season. The greenhouse, as you can see, is built with bamboo that we harvest from the south of Senegal, which makes it more sustainable. And we cover with transparent plastic sheets that will soon be replaced by recycled plastic. Our primary revenue stream comes from the tomatoes and peppers that we cultivate inside the greenhouse. Then secondly, our agroforestry produces fruits, nuts, and legumes that we sell to local distributors. And then we have one last new revenue stream that are our 10 by 10 cold storage units that are like very big fridges that we build with earth bricks and rice husk insulation. And inside these cold storages, we store local onions, but also the produce from our farms. So as I explained before, we designed and developed this project to support smallholder farmers. However, through our research in Senegal, we have learned that the smallholder farmers in Senegal often do not have a lot of money, and also it's very difficult for them to get access to credit from the bank. There are certain religious and cultural considerations that make this process more challenging, but also banks do not normally trust a lot smallholder farmers. But we still want them to be able to benefit from our innovative system, because smallholder farmers also deserve to profit from new technology. So we have developed a new system that addresses exactly this. In our joint venture model, we create partnership with existing smallholder farmers. Smallholder farmers bring the land to the project, and FERO invest in the capital for all the infrastructure, for the greenhouses, the agroforestry, the solar panel, and the irrigation infrastructure. We also bring horticultural expertise to maximize productivity. And then the annual profit is then shared between the smallholder farmer and FERO according to the value of each party's contribution to the total project cost. And then to create further economic impact, in year 10, we do a transfer of ownership of all the infrastructure to the smallholder farmer. The investment has been repaid already in the first 2 years. So after the transfer of ownership, the farmer keeps all the profit. After 10 years working together with FERO's team, the smallholder farmer is going to be proficient in this new greenhouse agroforestry system. So this is going to ensure long-term sustainability of our project. FERO's model is built to scale. We have developed a model that is a 3-win scenario. a win for our planet, a win for rural communities, and a win for FERO. The UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration is finishing in 2030, a key deadline to prevent catastrophic impact on our planet. So now is the moment to act. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your introduction and congratulations on your progress. I'm so interested in FERO and how your team founded. I believe our audience also keen to learn from your experiences. But let's put this question on hold and let Carlos introduce his business, Pacchar. Again, please put your questions in the question box. We will discuss them later. Thank you, Paula. And now you have the floor, Carlos.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Again, like I said, my name is Carlos Gonzalez. I am the CEO and co-founder of PACHAR. I was born and raised in Guayaquil, Ecuador, a tropical biodiverse city in the Pacific coast of Ecuador, and a city that thrives surrounded by ecosystems and agriculture tradition. That scenario set my motivation to obtain a degree in agroindustrial engineering, seeking to add value to agricultural products. In 2018, while working as a teakwood plantation manager, I realized that a change was urgent. And that change and making it happen defined my life purpose ever since. Currently, 21% of Ecuador's territory is dedicated to agriculture. That is about 4.8 million hectares, generating residual biomass that traditionally are burned or left to decay in the fields, releasing huge amounts of greenhouse gases and affecting soil's health. Instead of burning, we decided to do pyrolysis and biochar to transform these residues into soil regeneration, climate action, and social benefit for smallholder farmers. So, charcoal is one of the oldest technologies used by mankind. The famous Amazonian dark soils, known as Terra Preta do Índio, were man-modified by adding carbon as early as the year 3000 BC. Now, biochar is the modern terra preta and represents a versatile solution to regenerate soils, mitigate climate change, and improve rural society living income. About 80% of Ecuador cropland is managed by smallholder farmers. So it is hard for them to access expensive technologies and get endorsement for carbon markets. For this reason, we adapted modular pyrolysis technologies to make it affordable, transportable, shareable, easy to operate. No electricity or fossil fuels are required, and the process can be certified to generate carbon sinks, a new revenue stream for taking climate action. We are convinced that education is the cornerstone of action. For this reason, our team is deployed in the field to enable farmers to produce, mix, and apply biochars by themselves, raise awareness on soil health, and understand how to measure and read soil health indicators and adapt new regenerative practices for soil and crop productivity. Our systems are integrated to agro-exporters' sustainability programs to make it affordable to farmers. From about 7 carbon dioxide removal technologies available worldwide, biochar is leading the market for its simplicity and functionality, accounting for 86% of long-term carbon removal deliveries in 2024. The voluntary carbon market is growing really fast, and it hit $12 billion value by January. Our roadmap in 2026 is to upgrade our technology and obtain a certification. With these actions, we will enable new byproducts like wood vinegar, increase the biochar production capacity, and most importantly, create a new revenue stream from the biochar carbon sinks. We are proud to share part of our stakeholders that are supporting our growth. And I would like to give special thanks to the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, the G20 Global Land Initiative, the International Trade Center, and the Youth Ecopreneur Program, which Paula and I are proud to be part of. And we encourage the audience to join the next cohort in 2026. It's a really beautiful experience. Finally, while the climate clock is moving to the point of no return, we have the privilege to take action and mitigate the catastrophic consequences of climate change. Biochar and soil regeneration are scalable and science-based solutions to alleviate climate change while supporting smallholder farmers and rural communities. Let's put carbon back in the soils together. Thank you very much for listening my business introduction. I will be more than happy to share my experiences in the entrepreneurial journey as the dialogue develops. So thank you again, and Jamian, over to you.
Thank you so much for your introduction, and I'm very glad to hear that you enjoying the ECO program. And I believe, of course, our audience are very also keen to learn from you. So the first question for you and Paula is, what are your motivations for starting a green business? How it compared with working for a traditional business or work as an employee? Any benefits or drawbacks you want to share with our audience?
Thank you, Jamian. So my first motivation is purpose, doing something meaningful with my lifetime. Everyone thought I was crazy back in 2021 when I quit my 9 to 5 corporate job and trying to make revenue with charcoal. So I really believed, I still do, believe that biochar is a powerful tool to mitigate climate change and support farmers. And passion combined with purpose make things happen. Like Friedrich Nietzsche said, if someone has a why to commit his life, he will find the house. So that will be my motivations, purpose and passion.
Thank you, Carlos. So you are driven by your passion on like environmentals, driven business, and I believe your business is making very positive impact in the environmental and economic in rural areas in your home country. So actually, do you have any question for Paula? So, or like to exchange your ideas on how did you come up with your business idea and how did you identify business opportunities and then turn it into a real business? I believe the conversation between you two will be much more interesting for our audience. Any comments from you, Paula and Carlos?
Yes. So yeah, Carlos, can you share a bit more with us about how did you come up maybe with this business idea, and how did you identify the opportunity and later turn it a bit more, as Jamian was saying, into a real business?
Okay. Yep. So back in 2018, I was managing a teak wood plantation in Ecuador. So the whole country has about 300,000 hectares of forestry plantation. My management area was 3,000 hectares, and I could realize that mountains of wood debris and wood waste was generated and burned every week. So that's where I realized that we needed to change that. That was wasting a lot of biomass. And that's where I saw the opportunity to turn that waste into value. So transforming wood waste to biochar was the business idea. And then how I transformed that idea into reality. Well, I read this book, The Lean Startup Method by Eric Rice, which I recommend to everyone to read. And the key learning from that is a cycle of 3 actions: create, measure, and learn. First, we create a minimum viable product, invest as few as possible, test that minimal viable product in the market and see if it fits. that it's critical to measure if it fits the sales traction, the market adaptability. And from that learnings, we decided to go on to pivot, to make some changes, and if it doesn't work, to do something different. But for me, these three actions, create, measure, and learn, were key to transform the idea in my head to a business reality. So maybe the same question back to you, Paula. How did you transform the idea of FERO into a business reality?
Yes, thank you, Carlos. Actually, before responding to your question, I wanted to come back a bit to what Jamian said before about our motivations, maybe, and how does it differ to maybe the traditional businesses. So actually for us, well, we came to Senegal and we realized that deforestation and degradation were a really serious challenge in the Senegalese context. And we were already aware of many amazing initiatives that are taking place with the aim of reforesting, especially the borders of the Sahara Desert, like, for example, the Great Green Wall Initiative. But we realized that in order to keep up with this pace of deforestation, we also need to accelerate our reforestation efforts. So we thought that if we made reforestation profitable for the main users of the land, and in the Senegal case, smallholder farmers, we could maximize these efforts. So for this, we developed our farming system that combines the mid-tech bamboo greenhouses with the agroforestry. And this is basically a profitable way for smallholder farmers to reforest their degraded cropland. And we actually made a conscious choice of to set up a social business instead of an NGO, because it would make us less dependent on securing funding from philanthropic sources, potentially slowing our reforestation efforts. So by making reforestation profitable, we can tackle a much larger market, helping our planet while also increasing the incomes of smallholder farmers. And I actually do believe that the beauty of a social enterprise, as Carlos was saying, in comparison with a traditional business, is that we are focused on making a positive impact on our planet and societies. So this allows us to turn our passion for making a difference in the world into our daily work. And then a bit of how everything started, more in practical details. So we had previously explored and applied agroforestry principles in the Caribbean on a smaller scale, and had learned about the great impact it has on improving soil quality as well as on food production. So it seemed like a perfect approach to work with in Senegal as a reforestation strategy. However, as we might all know, agroforestry takes time to mature and produce significant yields, so we need to complement it with something else. At the same time, we had seen how in the Netherlands, greenhouse farming is an extremely profitable sector. So we thought, why not bring this technology to Senegal and adapt it to the local context? So instead of warming the climate for the plants, we had to cool it. And instead of using steel, we decided to use a local and sustainable material, that is bamboo. So Senegal, as many other countries in the region, are struggling with food sovereignty. For example, Senegal imports around 300,000 tons of fruits and vegetables every year, including around 8,500 tons of tomatoes. So we saw the market opportunity was there. That is a key element in turning an idea into a real business. So as Carlos was explaining before, first, it's really important to deeply understand the problem that you are trying to tackle. This includes a lot of desk research, but also mainly a lot of field research. And this really allows you to refine an idea into something that actually responds to a real need. Then you have to translate this idea into a concrete solution. And this does not only include developing the technical solution per se, but also, of course, designing a viable economic model. How are you going to commercialize your product or service? Then you have to validate this in the real world, which means building or setting up your idea, seeing if it actually works in the real life, and whether it satisfies market demand. That is what we call a product market fit. And then you are ready to scale. This sounds as it's very easy, but it's not always that straightforward. It's normally a longer process of testing, learning, and adjusting. But if the problem is real and your solution creates value, you can definitely build something that is both impactful and scalable.
So thank you, Paula. Thank you for sharing so detailed approach of how you come up with the ideas and make the real and land in Senegal. I noticed a question from the question book, so which is, as we all know, the running green business is different with running traditional business, which will be harder sometimes. So, do you have any obstacles or challenges on your way to starting your business, and how do you overcome them? So, this is a question for Paula and Carlos.
Yeah. If you want, I can go first, Carlos. So yeah, definitely starting your own green business comes with many challenges. One of the main challenges I would say relates to funding, because many companies take time to generate revenue, as there are several steps that need to take place before your innovation is ready to be commercialized. But all these preparatory stages also require funding. However, many investors are looking for initial revenue before stepping in with investments. So it becomes a bit of like a chicken and egg cycle. That being said, however, there's always ways to break out of these cycles. There are actually many grant programs specifically targeting social enterprises in their early stages, which can support with prototype development or maybe carry out market research. And there are also a great number of accelerators that can support your business development. For example, as Carlos was mentioning before, the ECO program that for us, FERO, was really a transformative accelerator. And we wouldn't be able to be here in many different senses if it wasn't from the accelerator. So yeah, I really encourage you to look definitely at the available grants, but also finding an accelerator that is ready to accompany you throughout your early stage process.
Thank you, Paula, for sharing. And I agree with you. The first challenge that almost every entrepreneur has is access to fundings. And then when we are green entrepreneurs, we have the additional challenge of changing the status quo of the sector that we are attending. In our case, in regenerative agriculture, we have to compete with gigantic corporations that already have a well-positioned branding and give faster results in terms of productivity. So in that case, we were doing 3 years of research and development to objectively prove that biochar is actually a powerful soil amendment that reduces fertilizers needs and increases at the same time crop productivity. So one of our strategies to overcome that was R&D, bootstrapping research and development. And of course, it comes at a cost. In our case, we did that with the founders round only to prove that the product market fit. And then in the second stage, when we started generating revenue, with bootstrapped revenue by looking for clients that are aligned to our vision. Luckily, we found international corporations that are committed to meet Paris Agreement objectives to decarbonize agriculture. So carbon agriculture and climate smart agriculture are growing markets that are bringing opportunities to green startup business to scale. So it is a really good strategy to look for these kind of clients to create revenue. And with that revenue, we will attract equity investment. So in our case, that was our strategy. Other of the challenges in the global south is changing policies. Today we can sell carbon credits legally, but tomorrow we don't know. Legislation is constantly changing. And to tackle that, we found a bypass called the voluntary carbon market. Don't rely on the governments, which usually in the global south, they don't have stable policies. So try to find a private commercial pathway. That strategy ensures stable revenue and stable sales for your business. So I'm happy to share these two strategies.
Thank you, Carlos and Paula, for sharing your approach or strategy to overcome challenge. So based on your experiences, I know a lot of our audience, as well as young generation, want to start their own green business. So what are your suggestions for our peers who want to start a green business?
I'll begin this one, Paula, if it's okay for you. So the first part is understand the problem that you are aiming to relieve or to fix. Fully understand it, because that's how you're gonna craft your solution. So that's the first part. And then don't wait to feel ready, 100% ready, because you'll never be. So trust in yourself, in your instincts, and go ahead and uh, build a plane while you're falling down. So I think it's common in the entrepreneurial journey. You are not ready, but in the way you're learning to build everything from the supply chain, sales strategy, human resources, etc. So and then you realize you have more abilities than you believed. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. I mean, it's the pathway of learning, mistakes, and don't give up. And repeat always the cycle of creating, measuring, and learning. Measuring is critically important, because everything you measure you can control, and everything you can control you can improve or change. So my critical advice is trust in yourself. Don't wait to be ready. Understand the problem, craft your solution accordingly, and go ahead and try your best. Paula, maybe now you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you, Carlos. So yeah, the first thing that I would say is go for it. Young people can actually play such an important role in regenerating our planet through new innovations. We actually have more access to knowledge than ever before. It's much easier to connect with inspiring people around the world than ever before. And of course, we young people, we have the passion. So many might not take you seriously in the beginning, as maybe Carlos was explaining before, but I still encourage you to go for it, because yeah, you could play actually a tremendous role in bringing back life to our planet. Regarding more concrete tips, I think I have three main things that I would like to highlight. So as I mentioned before, and I think as also Carlos mentioned, it is very important to really understand the challenge or the problem that you are tackling. Secondly, it's also key to have passion for what you are doing, and also to believe in yourself, and also make sure that you are surrounded by a team that is also as committed and enthusiastic as you are. And finally, do not be afraid to ask for help, because there are so many people around the world with amazing and impressive skills and knowledge who are going to be happy to support you. So yeah, if you have an idea, I really encourage you to follow it, because yeah, it might help shape the future of our planet.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Paula and Carlos. And I agree with both of you. As a young person, I think we should be brave and go ahead for it. And we can learn by doing, but we should also be careful to identify what the situation is. So Dr. Tony Simons, so you are from elder generation. So do you have any other suggestion for young generation like us who want to start or lead a green business? We would like to know your ideas. Oh, sorry, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, the older generation talking while muted. So yeah, one of the suggestions I would have would be speaking as one of the older persons is, and listening to Paula's need for connecting experience, is maybe we should start a OPECO, the Old Person's Ecopreneur Program, so that we can combine it. Because the title says it's generations, and it's about linking generations. The advantage that young people have over older people is their ability to try things out, to have optimism, the ability to innovate, to ability to not have all of the baggage of biases and previous experiences that might make people more cautious. So You don't want to be a risk-taking, reckless person as you get older, but when you're younger, you should be willing to take some risks. Now, obviously, with obligations and family and social settings, that's difficult because of expectations in the current world. And I think, as you go about considering things, make sure that you're adding something new or better or different or doing things in a different way. You are competing against 400 million SMEs around the world. There's 400 million small and medium-sized enterprises. And let us remember that 90% of startups fail. So it's tough, and you will spend your own money, and it will be difficult. But the key thing about most successful entrepreneurs and ecopreneurs is steadfastness of purpose, of keeping sight of the goal, of getting knocked down but standing up again. And that resilience and that belief, it's infectious, and it carries other people along, and particularly investors. They want to see those things. They know that things don't go wrong. They know that 100% of things don't work. So being honest with yourself and the stakeholders that you're working with, and many will be working with community-based organizations and NGOs, and it's important that you own your mistakes and learn from them, as both Carlos and Paula were saying. And remember not to place more risk on the smallholder, because they're already often living in precarious situations, and to help them feel empowered as they go about it. So I think I'll leave it there for the moment so we can move on.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for the advice for us. And I believe with you, like we should know how can we differentiate with other business to stand up from our competitors and to understand our stakeholder. So thank you so much for all your suggestions, Paula, Carlos, and Tony. I think we are brave enough to turn an idea into a real business. However, we needed to grow and finance our business later. So next, we're gonna focus on discussing how to finance the green businesses. So the first question is actually for Paula and Carlos. So what are the sources for financing your business? How did you know Eco?
Yeah, thank you, Jamian, for the question. So until today for FERO, we have carried out our work mainly through grants. We have won around 400,000 euros in grants from organizations like TU Delft, WWF, LuxDev, and RVO. But now we are ready to continue developing our projects. So we are currently looking for investors for our pre-seed round. And I have to say, as I said before, that without Jeco, we would not be where we are today, not only in this session, but in general in the state of our company. We found the program online while looking for opportunities to grow FERO, and it has really been such a transformative experience.
Thank you, Paula. Would you add something, Carlos?
Yeah, well, our case was a little bit different. We are based in Ecuador, a global south country, and we started with the founders round from our personal savings, 30,000 USD from four friends, committed to transform waste into biochar. So that's how we funded the 3 years R&D and how we proved our product market fit. And from year three, we've been bootstrapping sales. We were lucky enough to acquire corporate clients that are funding our products and services to make them accessible to smallholder farmers. But then I realized to scale up, we need external funding sources, and since last year I started looking for it. They are most likely in the global north. That's our recommendation for my fellows entrepreneurs. Try to incorporate a business in Europe or North America. It's way easier to access capital. There's more people willing to risk capital in investments versus the global south. Don't look for for loans in the early stages of your business, as starting a business is full of uncertainties, and you don't want to start it with the only certainty to pay a debt. So at the beginning, try to get a founders round or angel investor round, and to scale up, I will say try to find equity investments in the global north. And to make it easier, incorporate a business or a company in Europe or North America, so it's going to be more reliable and easier to do it. And finally, I met Gecko through LinkedIn research, and I was surprised on how many funding opportunities are out there in the internet. I started looking for it in the year 4 of my business. I wish I did it before, but don't wait too much like I did. Start looking for funding opportunities. There are more available than you think.
Thank you, Carlos and Paula. Thank you for sharing many funding sources and also the suggestions to find some financial support from the North countries. But I think nowadays all the North countries would like to engage with and invest in South countries. Next, so I'd like to give the floor to you, Carlos and Paula, to discuss specific investment-related question with Tony. So, do you have any questions for Tony about investment and investor engagement? Carlos and Paula, you have the floor now.
Yes, thank you, Damian. Yeah, Tony, I have some questions for you. So besides PACHAR and FERO, I am sure that there are many other ecopreneurs approaching funding rounds in this webinar. So could you maybe give us any tips on how startups can get exposed to or identify potential investors?
So yeah, old dogs also have a few tricks, and that is they pretend to be speaking even when the microphone's on. Sorry for the confusion and the joke. Thanks, Paula. Yeah. So what is the motivation of yourself, and how does it align with potential investors? Because if there's a mismatch in what you both want, so before you approach any investor, be really clear, as you both have done already, really clear on what your value proposition is, what your cost structures are, how much money you think you're going to have to invest, as Carlos said, from your family, friends, and self. And from that, then start thinking, okay, let me build up that business case. What is it? Am I selling a product? Am I selling a service? Is it a combination of the two? What comes next? And so for Carlos, I'd be thinking, okay, that's great. You're putting biochar into the soil. We see with soil health in the Northern Hemisphere, the move away from chemistry of using pesticides and herbicides and fertilizers to biology. And so what is that shift going to look like in the developing world? And how, if you're putting that in, but, and Carlos, you talked about purpose and passion. Well, there's also phosphorus, another P word to think about. And therefore, how you might think about, okay, well, what am I going to be doing with mycorrhiza, and how can we use the woody flora in integrated systems to scavenge, the phosphorus from acidic soils, or so thinking at a holistic phase. In identifying individual investors, there are so many investor workshops and forum and seminars and closed door sessions, and the number one in the world is obviously the World Economic Forum. You're going to struggle probably to pitch there or to get some funding there, but there's a whole lot of other green tech festivals and things, meetings to go to. The problem is often they're run by corporates, and that's their business model, is they're holding conferences, and they'll charge you $2,500 US a day to attend a 3-day meeting, and you can't afford that. But what you can do is download the list of attendees from the website. So keep on your radar screen those kind of events. Don't just do one email to everybody. You really have to tailor it to it. I really like the intervention that you made in session 2 of that meeting. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go. You don't have to explain why, but you just weren't able to go. And start a dialogue with any investor. You go through 5 stages. You can leapfrog some of them, but typically they are inform. You want to inform investors, okay? And then you want to interest them. You've given them some knowledge, you inform them, now you want to interest them. Then you want to involve them. And that involvement may not be straight away a financial transaction. It might be a, kind of a partnership. And it's very reassuring sometimes to investors or to corporates that you go and see is to say, look, hey, the purpose of my visit today is I'm not begging for money. We have capital. We're starting what we want to do. I'm here to form a partnership. And it's a much safer space for them because, people that are in that situation, they're going to approve probably between 1 and 10% of things that they're pitched, and they get bored. And they don't know when they start, is this a waste of my time sitting down here? Oh, thanks, we'll get back to you. So you really got to plan and get ready for that session that you're going to have. Practice with your aunt at home, practice with your next door neighbor. You really give them the question so that it's authentic and sincere, and you're not doing it to script. You're trying to have a conversation with them. They want something. They want to be first. They want to, make some money out of it. They want to have low risk. They want to see that it might lead to something bigger, and how you can kind of steer them on that pathway, reassuring them. I would suggest as a starting point, unless you know the investor really well, when you sit down with them, speak 40% of the time and listen 60% of the time. Meetings always go wrong if you sit there and talk for 80% or 90% of the time, and then you only let them speak for 10% because they don't have an opportunity. And you want to sit down with a view to, this investor has to convince me that they're the best money to support me. Look at them as the one who's trying to convince you. And if they are so arrogant that they don't look at you as a fantastic opportunity, okay, let it go. You don't want to start with that kind of social pressure and interaction. You want, and they're people, and you'll be dealing with them for a lot, and you don't want it to be a nightmare, and don't accept things that you would not accept in any other part of your life. Because there are the have and the have-nots in this world. And typically we think of that as money. Yeah, I've got money and you don't, or you've got money and I don't, But you've got things like, and Carlos, you saw with some of your clients as well, you've got social capital. You're living in a country with more natural capital. You're living in a country with, the human capital, the ability to operationalize something. And as you may not use all of the language that they want, but learn their vocabularies, because this is all about conversations that often don't work together. Jamian, please wave your hands when I start waffling or I'm repeating myself. I don't want to go off into just a dialogue with myself. So should we stop and have a break or look at other questions from the audience? I used to be an academic, and you can see.
I think you already covered what are the attributes each investor looking for. And do you have any other questions for Tony, Carlos, and Paula?
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Tony. It's really inspiring to know that we are in the right way. Some of our actions align with what you just said, but it's always good to learn from the experience. So based on the challenges that I have experienced in my journey, comes my next questions. So it will be, how sustainable startups in the agriculture field can achieve competitive advantage versus traditional and gigantic agricultural corporations? How can we compete, for example, with inorganic fertilizers branded with worldwide known logos and brands? So what will be your strategy or insights about that?
Okay, well, let's just come back to the basic maths. With nitrogen fertilizer, it takes 8 megawatts of energy to produce 1 ton of fertilizer. And that business model is dying. And people will be looking for something new. So nitrogen fixing organisms, mycorrhiza, these new biofilms, the nitrogen fixing rice that's coming online, the nitrogen fixing maize that's coming in online, that is biological. And the company that holds the IPR for this is going to be licensing that for free to developing countries, because they see a whole range of things, and that's their business model. I think when you said, so you can compete with them, well, do you want to compete with them or do you want to partner with them? So one of the biggest agro companies in the world are the traders, like Cargill and ADM and Bunge and Barry Callebaut, etc. And they need others who understand the space and the geography and the producers that you're interacting with. So to be that middle person connecting different parts of the supply chain, that's a really important thing, and adding value in what you do. And because so many supply chains get disrupted, we see with COVID, with climate change, with recent geopolitical conflicts, there's massive difficulties in doing that. And we see that reflected in commodity prices. I think dealing with the corporates in the north, they have voluntary commitments that their board have asked for, and they also have compliance issues, and understand their geography. So the latest figures we have is that the global green economy now is about $7.9 trillion. Okay, it's massive. And so if you're going to label your business as and that's the fourth standalone sector, the largest. So after industrials and healthcare, and what's the other one? I forget at the moment, but it's the fourth largest. And how those are categorized, if you want to say that you're a green enterprise, you have to meet the industrial classification benchmark. And look at those and be aware of it. The EU deforestation regulation has come in, but it's been watered down so much because of farmers in Germany, and in Paris and in London and in other places, Belgium, etc., striking, driving tractors into the capital because they're unhappy. And they're unhappy with what's happening in their legislations, and that it's too onerous, and they're going to be going bankrupt. So keep an eye on those, and not to get a whole lot of problems, but to come with solutions to them, because your job is to de-risk, and somebody who can help take away risk for them. And there is no machine that they can measure your proposal or you as a person or your real history about. It's their ability to personally assess how much confidence I have in you. Do I trust you? Let's start out small and see how we go. Let's see how you're doing great in the current situation. Let's see how you go under pressure.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for your advice. So you are right. The traditional business is still very strong, but their models is not gonna sustain in the future. So I noticed that our audience is asking for different stage to pitch and investor. Would you like to continue with that to introduce later stages to pitch and investor?
So I didn't quite understand the question. It's just help clarify.
So you were listing 5 stages to pitch an investor. So would you like to continue with that?
Oh, yeah. So, okay, sorry. The 5 I's. So, first of all, you inform them. So, you've got to get in the door, you've got to be in the traffic. Secondly, you try and interest them, okay, by really targeting communication with them. Every letter, every email should be different to a different one. Once you've informed and interested them, you want to involve them. And to do that, you want to kind of connect with them. For them, what's their day job, whether it's an analyst or the asset manager or the owner of a foundation, what's their day job? And if you can help them with their day job, they'll help you with your investment. Okay, so try and understand that, put yourself in their mind. Okay, and that involvement in sharing something. They've got to come up with a new policy or dealing with HIV in the rural sector, and you've got one or you've seen some others. Share it with them. Oh, hey, this might be useful for you as you start to develop your new sustainability criteria around producer welfare. And then after you've involved them, then you want an investment, and the investment will likely be small to start with. Okay, it's not going to be straight away $10 million. So you're on a journey, and then once you've got their investment, do a good job on it, and then look to increase and show that, and show being able to look around corners, be able to look ahead and to be able to look around corners, because that's what they're wanting to look for and how best to put their money in.
Thank you so much, Tony. So Carlos and Paulo, do you have anything else to ask Tony? Or you?
Thank you again for sharing, Tony and Jamin. Well, just to comment, so new tendencies on climate smart agriculture, carbon regulations, and corporate commitment towards Paris Agreement are bringing opportunities to fund and scale up sustainability projects like ours. What particular insights regarding these 3 topics are you aware that we could learn and be informed about opportunities around these areas of concern worldwide?
Okay, great question. I'll try and do it as quick as I can. The first thing to remember is that it is a political tool, the Paris Agreement. Fantastic as it was at the time, it's legally binding. But what is legally binding? Countries must legally submit a 5-year plan. Countries must legally update that plan. There is no legal obligation to meet the plan, to achieve the targets. And we see it being rolled back and rolled forward. So don't put your producers at risk or your partners at risk, and use it. So, I mean, think about timber, which you know very well. Okay, so a cubic meter of tropical hardwood, maybe $400 or $500 a cubic meter. Okay, great. And the carbon content of that we know is 51% carbon of lignin and hemicellulose and cellulose in the wood. Okay, great. So we know that. So then why would you sell that for $2 or $4 or $5 a ton when actually you can sell it for $400 or $500? So the carbon value of that product is like 1%. And when you have very low ratios between the carbon value and the actual commodity, it's a red flag. Just be aware of it. Calculate that intensity in your product. If, say, it's like 20%, maybe in a grafted mango, where you can say, well, the farmer can't afford a $3 for a grafted mango. So if a carbon project could pay the cost of a grafted mango to go into the field to help a supply chain, then that's the startup money that the farmer needs to do that. And do you know what? You don't need to tell the farmer, reduce the fire threat, keep under control, weed it, if they're going to be getting a really good income out of those grafted mangoes versus other varieties that they have. Because if you're going to, imagine if you went to, you know, oil producers and like Putin or Venezuela or somebody else and say, you know, this is great. Or is that the time? Are we getting a flash for time, maybe?
Yeah, but you can go continue, please.
Okay, so imagine you went to Putin or the Saudi oil princes and said, hey, have we got a deal for you? We know that a barrel of oil is 160 liters. We know the carbon content of that is 85%. We know the specific gravity is about 80%. Therefore, we know that there's 122 kilograms of carbon inside that barrel, 122, or about 420 kilograms of CO2. So priced at $10 a ton, that's $4.20, okay? Now, so if you dig oil out of the ground and you refine it and stick it in a barrel and keep it in a warehouse for 100 years, we will give you $4.20. Or maybe not $4.20 because we have to pay for monitoring and reporting and verification. Maybe we'll give you $2. Would any of them say, oh, sounds a great deal? And yet we do that with forests, we do that with agriculture, we do that with enterprises. So yes, use those carbon markets and use the new biodiversity tokens in anything, but be very clear on how the risks involved in it, because if you use all of the social capital, you've worked for a community for 20 years and you advise them, yeah, let's go down this line, and nothing comes, or the investor pulls out at the last minute, then and you used to have social capital, you don't have any anymore.
Thank you so much, Tony, for sharing this. And also Paula and Carlos for your insights on how to launch a great business and then grow and finance it. I think as young generation, we should be confident and proactive to think and act bold, making good use of a variety of resources for learning and development, like mentioned by Tony, and then to think how can we lead or start a green business for our planet. We have now come to the end of our webinar, but this is only a starting point of learning on green business and cultivating our ecopreneurship. So in the end of the webinar, I would like to say thanks once again to our speakers, Dr. Tony Simons, Paula, and Carlos, on behalf of the G20 Global Land Initiative team. We appreciate the insights you shared and your helpful advice. Also, thank you to all of our participants for joining the webinar. It was your participation that made this conversation interactive and meaningful. And we are so sorry that we don't have time to cover all the questions. We hope you are inspired by the webinar. Your certification of participation will be sent to your email shortly after the webinar. And last thing is, please don't forget to join the May session of Generation Restoration Dialogue, where we are going to talk about another land restoration topic. So this is the end of the webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today, and see you in May.
Could I make one last point?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay, so you've seen all of these wonderful people here, 526. You've seen the chat. Go to the chat and save the chat. You can click the bottom right-hand thing where it says more, click that, and it says save chat, and then you'll be able to save all of those wonderful new contacts, all of those people, all of their ideas. Harvest the information that's there in front of you. That's a tip from one of the older generation.
Thank you so much for your suggestion. So we will keep all this chat and to send your follow-up message to all the participants registered and joined today. And I have to remind our participants that be careful with some promotion in the chat. Yeah, this is the last thing I want to say. And thanks again for coming today. Thank you so much, Dr. Tony Simons. Thank you, Carlos and Paula.
Thank you, Jiamian, Carlos, and Paula. Thanks.
Thank you. Deep thanks for the opportunity. Happy to share. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be the first of many conversations.
Muchas gracias por